What are you hearing about the Titans taking a quarterback at 1?
Travis Hunter, wide receiver, defensive back.
The Tennessee Titans select Cameron Ward, quarterback, Miami.
We all didn't expect this, of course, but I feel like with God, anything possible.
The NFL draft is officially underway. After months of waiting, it feels like the first round of the draft is officially complete. And it was just as unpredictable as we thought it would be. And as always, there are some winners and some losers from the first 32 picks. Now, full disclaimer, guys, this is all based on speculation. I mean, for example, last year I made this same exact video and stated that the Atlanta Falcons were huge losers for reaching for Michael Penix Jr. at pick number 8, just like the rest of the football world did. And while it was stupid considering the contract that they had just given Kirk Cousins, Penix ended up looking up pretty damn good in his rookie season. So I'm not perfect and I can't see the future. This is all based off of how things look like right now. A player that you reach for right now could end up being a superstar in the future. So just because in this brief moment of time it seems like your team is a huge loser or a huge winner doesn't mean that can't change in the future. Now, before we get to the content, this video is sponsored. We've been incredible to start the playoffs, hitting on 3 picks to make over $400, and it's gonna get better from here. Use my promo code Mikerophone to get $50 when you make a play of $5 or more on Prize Picks, or just click on the link in the description down below and get my picks through my Instagram at @TheFlightMike. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? This year's NFL draft had some teams make some incredible picks and some teams made some pretty terrible ones. And I think that the first bad pick of the draft actually came with the first pick of the draft. Yeah, I know this is incredibly bold, but hear me out. Despite having the #1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans walked out of round 1 as losers. Everyone knew who their pick was going to be. It's been all but confirmed for months, but that doesn't mean that it's ever been a good pick. The Will Levis experiment completely failed, and Tennessee does need a quarterback. But the problem is, this was the wrong year for a quarterback needy team to get the #1 pick. Last year, Tennessee would have jumped at the opportunity to draft Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels with the top pick, but this draft class doesn't have that. Now, don't get me wrong, Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the class, but if he were taken in last year's draft, it's not insane to say that he would have been the 5th or 6th quarterback off of the board. Tennessee's need for a quarterback not only forced them to take one that isn't a special talent at all, but it also forced them to pass up on 2 absolutely generational talents in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, something that they said that they were not going to do. And I know you might be thinking,
But Mike, that's a smokescreen.
well, if it was a smokescreen, wouldn't that smokescreen be out there to entice another team to move up and trade for the #1 overall pick? Teams were calling the Titans for the #1 overall pick in this year's draft, but they weren't willing to move off from it. Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are arguably the 2 best draft prospects we've seen in years, and a quarterback who, like I said, would have been a mid to late first rounder last year at best, was taken over them because of just how bad Will Levis ended up being. I mean, Cam Ward is 22nd on my big board this year, yet he's being drafted 1st overall over these guys. The Titans screwed themselves. Now, I know this might be an unpopular take, but I don't care. The Tennessee Titans are huge losers for this, but at the same time, Cam Ward is a winner for this. Unless Cam Ward proves to be among the Jaden Daniels and Drake Mays of the world, the Titans have just wasted an opportunity at getting a franchise-altering player. We didn't have to wait long to find out our very first big winner, and actually, in my opinion, there are 2 winners here, because the Cleveland Browns would make a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars, securing Jacksonville Travis Hunter and giving Cleveland an absolute haul of draft picks. Hunter, in my opinion, is arguably the best player in this draft, and is an archetype that we've never seen in the NFL. So Jacksonville moving up to get him is a huge win for them regardless of the haul. Hunter immediately steps in as the best corner in Jacksonville, and he will be a perfect fit opposite of breakout superstar Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side of the ball. Things just got wild in Jacksonville, and they're basically making it known that they're locked into Trevor Lawrence long term, and that this is his chance to prove them right. Meanwhile, the one thing that the Cleveland Browns have been missing as a result of the Deshaun Watson trade has been draft picks, and they're trying to make up for that deficit. The load of picks that that Cleveland got from Jacksonville secures them their future, including the 36th pick this year, a 4th round pick, Jacksonville's first next year, and the number 5 pick this year, which ended up turning into Mason Graham. Now, with the Jacksonville Jaguars struggling last year, you have no idea what that 1st round pick could be in the future. It could potentially be a very valuable pick if they repeat the same circumstances they had last year, which could set up Cleveland huge for the future. But even if not, the fact that Cleveland was able to move out of this pick, select a player that fits a position of need in Mason Graham, who in my opinion is the best defensive lineman in the draft and the guy that's one spot behind Travis Hunter on my big board, is just a huge win for them. Graham playing next to Myles Garrett makes the Cleveland line an absolute force to be reckoned with. And the fact that they got him on top of a load of picks that they got from Jacksonville, how could you not call this a win for the Browns? This trade was an absolute win-win for both teams, and that'll become very evident once the season starts. At pick number 10, we saw another situation where the player who was drafted is a winner in my book, but the team that drafted him came out as a loser, as the Chicago Bears selected tight end Colston Loveland. Bear in mind, at the time of this pick, both of the top tight ends were available for Chicago to take, and yes, Loveland is a top 10 player in the class in my opinion, but you just can't pass on Tyler Warren in this situation. Loveland is basically a glorified wide receiver. Don't get me wrong, Colston Loveland is an incredible route runner as a tight end and has top-notch ball skills, but Tyler Warren does everything else better. Warren would have been the perfect fit in the Chicago offense with Ben Johnson at the helm, and he could help protect Caleb Williams if need be, but instead they took a guy who will act as their wide receiver 3. However, I say this is a win for Loveland for 2 reasons. One, he's making top 10 money, and that's a huge difference maker when you just got drafted in the NFL draft. And 2, the Ben Johnson system is perfect for his development. In Detroit, Ben Johnson ran a lot of 12 personnel, meaning that Loveland doesn't have to worry about being the sole extra blocker for DeAndre Swift on run plays, and he can just focus on what he does best, run routes and catch the football. Tyler Warren should have been the pick here, and Chicago would have been much better off, but Colston Loveland made out great on day 1. Ironically enough, considering how last year went, I think the Atlanta Falcons are huge winners in this year's draft. Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker fell right into their lap at number 15, and he's the type of player who could completely transform their defense. Jalen Walker can rush off the edge, he can sit in coverage, he defends the run well, he does everything you could possibly want him to do on the football field. And after years of Falcons fans begging the front office to draft someone in the front 7, they finally got their guy. And Jalen Walker is going to be a problem, hoping to be the first Atlanta Falcons sack leader since Vic Beasley almost 10 years ago. On top of that, they traded back into the 1st round of the NFL draft and were able to get James Pierce Jr. at number 26. The Atlanta Falcons loaded up on those front 7 guys that their fans wanted so badly, and they got 2 very, very good ones at that. Atlanta might have won the entire first night of the draft in terms of talent because their defense is going to look a lot different this season. Another huge winner from the defensive side of the ball on night 1 was the Denver Broncos, who took stud nickel corner Jahdae Barron at pick number 20. It was a huge surprise that Barron fell this far, and after signing Talanoa Hufanga and Drake Greenlaw, Denver's defense just keeps getting better. Barron doesn't necessarily have the length to be an elite outside corner, but boy, he is something else as a ball hawk. He was the best nickel corner in the country last year and was the best nickel in the draft, and he can even back up and play safety if need be. Denver adding a weapon this talented and versatile should have been expected, but it wasn't. They were heavily mocked to take someone on offense like Omarion Hampton or maybe a wide receiver, but I think this was the perfect pick for them. Barron should have been gone in the early teens, but he ultimately fell to 20, and honestly, when you're in the same exact division as the Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs, and you have to face off against Patrick Mahomes twice a year, it probably would help to have elite defensive backs. The Denver Broncos now have additional help next to Talanoa Hufanga and Patrick Surtain II, and could potentially be one of the best pass defenses in the NFL this year. North Carolina running back Omarion Hampton is another guy who made out great. He went about where he was expected to, but man, the team fit is absolutely perfect for Hampton's playstyle and for his potential. Outside of Ashton Jeanty, Hampton is the best back in this class, and now he's headed to the Los Angeles Chargers, headlining a Greg Roman offense which has led some of the most dangerous rushing attacks in football over the last decade, including the record-breaking 2019 Ravens. Now, I know what you might be thinking.
Mike, the Chargers just signed Najee Harris. Why would they take a running back in the 1st round?
Well, Najee Harris was only signed to a 1-year deal. They have zero commitment to him afterwards, birds. Plus, Najee has never been anything special in the first place. Hampton is an unbelievable runner, can break any tackle, and has a fantastic vision out of the backfield. He can eat regardless of Najee Harris being next to him. The one parallel I'd like to draw in this particular instance is just take a look at Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery on the Detroit Lions, and it seems like that's what the Los Angeles Chargers are trying to replicate here with Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris. If Najee Harris is ever to leave, Omarion Hampton is poised to break out as a 1,200 plus yard rusher. He is that good. But even if he doesn't, the Los Angeles Chargers are just taking a page out of the book of the team that was ranked 6th overall in rushing yards this past year. This past year, J.K. Dobbins had over 900 rushing yards for 4.6 yards per carry. So just imagine what Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton could do in this Greg Roman offense, on top of Justin Herbert doing what he does best and throwing the deep ball. This sets up the play action moving forward for the Los Angeles Chargers and could give them a recipe for success on offense moving forward. Now, I know that this next winner might be controversial, but the New York Giants are absolute winners this year. They took, in my opinion, the best player in the draft in Abdul Carter at number 3, who I made a video earlier on this week, but the main reason that they're winners in this scenario is that they were able to take Carter at 3 and still get who they believe is their franchise player with a 5th-year option in Jackson Dart after they traded back into the first round and selected him with the 25th pick. It's so important to do this as opposed to just waiting until the second round to take your quarterback, because when you select a player in the second round of the NFL draft, they're only on a 4-year contract. When you select them in the first round of the NFL draft, they're on a 4-year contract, plus you have a 5th-year option, which gives you 1 extra year of that player on a cheap contract. New York fell in love with Jackson Dart over the draft process, and the fact that they were able to get both of their guys is insane. The Giants had a ton of connections to Dart. Former head coach Joe Judge is an assistant at Ole Miss, Joe Shane has a kid who goes to Ole Miss, and of course, Eli Manning is a Rebels alum. It grew increasingly obvious that New York wanted Jackson Dart, but the question was whether or not they could afford him and how were they going to potentially take him. Selecting him at number 3 overall would have been a huge reach, but it seems like they got their answer, and they walked out of the draft as winners. But this brings us to the biggest loser of the NFL draft. Jackson Dart was the second quarterback taken, which means that Shador Sanders fell out of the first round completely. And honestly, one of my friends texted me saying he felt bad for Shador Sanders, and I would feel bad for Shador Sanders if it wasn't Shador Sanders. We're talking about the man that consistently flexed his wrist before games, and it just gets really sad because the Sanders family practically built a whole room for Shador just so they could celebrate him getting drafted. 1 year ago, Deion Sanders went viral after talking trash about one of his former players, and when a fan was tweeting at him, he quote tweeted it and said that his son will be a top 5 pick. Where's your son going? I got time today. And the craziest part about this is Coach Prime got community noted saying Shador Sanders was not a top 5 draft pick, and I'm just curious to know what the hell happened here, because I've made videos on Shador Sanders before. I do believe in his arm talent. There were some rumblings about him just having a terrible interview process. So was he just that bad in interviews to the point where he fell all the way out of the first round? Remember, 1 year ago, fans were speculating that Shador Sanders was going to be the number 1 overall pick. And then a few months ago, Shador Sanders was mocked as a top 2 to 3 pick. Then he became a top 10 pick, but none of that happened. He watched his teammate and best friend get drafted 2nd overall. Jackson Dart was taken ahead of him. Multiple quarterback needy teams, from the New Orleans Saints to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who don't even have a QB1 on their roster, passed on him for better overall talent, and he was stuck watching the draft as a nervous bystander with his Hall of Fame father. This was by far the craziest thing to happen on night 1, and it's very reminiscent of what happened to a guy I mentioned earlier a few years ago in Will Levis. Will Levis was mocked to be a top 5 pick all year, but when the draft came around, he fell to 2nd. If Shador's career ends up anything like Levis, then these GMs are gonna look like geniuses because they clearly know something about Shador that we don't. In my opinion, Shador Sanders is a better quarterback prospect than Dart, and is honestly the most pro-ready quarterback in the class. But apparently NFL GMs don't agree, which is why I'm making YouTube videos about the picks, not in the war room making them. I'm curious curious to see where Shador goes on day 2, and I truly do think that Cleveland might take a flyer on him early on, because Cleveland was mocked to select Shador Sanders at number 2 for a very long time. So I don't see them passing up on him with their next pick. However, the fact that he doesn't even have a team right now makes him by far the biggest loser from day 1 of the draft, and he may become a loser as a pro with how general managers are viewing him. But at the same time, it's important to remember that there have been moments in NFL history where players that were viewed as top-end talent ended up slipping to the end of the first round of the NFL draft, most famously Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson. So is Shador Sanders going to be a case of Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson, or is he going to be a case of Geno Smith and Will Levis? Let me know what you guys think about our biggest winners and losers. We have videos on Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter on your end screen, and I'll meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.